Hello, and thank you for being here at my channel. My name is Chrissy Hodges. I'm an advocate for OCD, particularly pure OCD. This is my book, my memoir of my experience. I am a certified peer support specialist here in the state of Colorado, working worldwide to provide support for individuals, as well as referral consultations if you are looking for therapists. If you are looking for treatment, Treat My OCD, which is also No CD, which is an app, also does telehealth treatment. And I believe they are all over the world now, but you can find out more at treatmyocd.com or in my description down below. Sometimes it takes me a little while to get it down there, but I will put a link that you can schedule an assessment. So they'll be able to do exposure response prevention, which is the gold standard treatment for OCD. Just so you know, the banana is here. I haven't quite figured out how to do the setup yet. Where the banana is showing. But don't worry, the banana will always be here. Come here, Bubby. Come here. My dog has, he had surgery. And then yesterday they had to take the pin out of his leg because it was coming through. And I'm just a mess. Like, they're like, you need to keep him still. And I'm like, he's 9 months. How am I going to keep him still? So every time he moves, I have like a jolt of anxiety. So I might talk to him a little bit through this. But hey, I just really wanted to come on today and talk to you about a topic I think is really important, something that's not talked about often, and something you may experience or have experienced before. And it's also something that's really prevalent right now because a lot of people are getting triggered and having relapses during COVID. Why? We've been dealing with this for a year and a half, and it is the ultimate uncertainty, right? The ultimate. We don't know what's happening. We don't know when everything is going to be under control, when things are going to end, when things are going to go back to normal, which, unfortunately, I don't know if anything will ever go back to normal, which is also a source of uncertainty. And in uncertainty comes relapse. In uncertainty, outside routine, outside anything is just, y'all know how it is. It's just a recipe for disaster when it comes to OCD. So a lot of people are experiencing new themes, relapse, but especially the fear of relapse. And so I just wanted to talk about that a little bit today. And my hope is to validate you if you're experiencing that, and just to talk a little bit about how I work through it for myself. I may have done a video that's similar to this even just a couple weeks ago. And if I have, whatever, I might repeat the same things, but maybe you need to hear it, or maybe I'll say something different. So here's my take. Stop licking your feet. He keeps licking his paws. The vet's like, please don't let him lick his paws. I'm like, I don't want to put the cone of shame on. Here's the thing. The first time you experienced OCD, think back to it, right? The first big time. I'm not talking about when OCD was kind of there, or if that's how it happened for you, that it was there and it was consistent or persistent and it was frustrating. But lots of us have kind of the big one, the one that hit that was like, oh my God. So for me, I have two. I have the first one that hit when I was 8, which was the fear of vomit. Okay, so that one was horrible. It was different, I think, because I was kind of still a kid. I had different coping mechanisms. I didn't understand the complexity of the world, but religious scrupulosity accompanied it, which made it pretty darn, torturous. Watch out, baby. So that was horrible, and I remember that as being very traumatic. My whole world was turned upside down. I was a normal 8-year-old kid, right? And then all of a sudden, every single day, I'm worrying that I've done something wrong to piss God off, and I'm getting these horrible thoughts. So my whole world shifted to, I have to do everything perfect, and then I have to hide things, so everything became structured. It was absolutely traumatic for an 8-year-old. And then not to have the capability of telling, my family, and for reasons that, I knew that it wouldn't be believed or taken seriously or validated. It may have been believed, but I just knew at a young age, don't tell. because you're probably not going to get the results that you need or want, right? So that's on top of everything else. So the second was the sexual orientation OCD that hit when I was 14. This was the big one, okay? This was the big one for me. Now, I'd already had the emetophobia, the fear of vomiting. So I had an idea in my head, like something's weird, something's up. But of course, I've linked it back to religious scrupulosity. And I'm like, I must have done something really wrong and we've upped the ante for punishments, which is this anxiety and these intrusive thoughts. Again, I didn't tell anybody because, as a 14-year-old, I knew I couldn't. And what I remember, I can remember everything about that night. Everything. I can remember the way the room felt. I could remember what it looked like. I can remember how my brain felt like it was on fire. Every single move that I made. And in my adult life, I now realize that I was experiencing extreme trauma. Right? My life changed when I got sexual orientation OCD at 14. Everything that I knew up to that point that I didn't think I had to question, boom, was turned upside down. And worse, I didn't have anybody to talk to. I didn't have any clarification. We didn't have the internet. This was 1993. There was no internet. 1992. I don't know. Anyway, I didn't have any way except for just to suffer through. And that's what I did for the next 6 years. It would alternate between emetophobia and sexual orientation OCD. And then, we would, of course, the overarching was religious scrupulosity. So I wanted to give you a little bit of that backstory. I ended up getting help. I had a suicide attempt and a hospitalization, but I did get the help that I needed, thank goodness, and we could afford it, and thank goodness, and I found someone on AOL Dollop. But I remember after therapy being terrified. There were two things, being terrified of a relapse. Okay, so, but then also going, I need to get as far away from OCD as I possibly can. Because I don't want anyone to know that I went through this, especially the suicide attempt. And I didn't want people to know my themes, right? And B, I don't want to remember. Because it was horrible. Because OCD is horrible. I wanted the life that I felt like everybody else had that didn't have to worry about this shit. I wanted to be that person, and that's what I started chasing in my 20s. I'm gonna go as far away from this as I can, and I won't remember it, and I won't ever have to face it again. Phillipson taught me how to do ERP, so that's it. That's all I need to know. And in that ignorance in my actions, I failed to realize that OCD does not go away and that relapse is inevitable. And whenever I would think about that, I would think it's not possible, but I was also so scared because rock bottom was so bottom. It was so dark. And I remember, and this is in my memoir, I remember the days leading up to the rock bottom in my suicide attempt. I remember everything, how horrible it was, how trapped I was. Like to the degree it's terrifying how much I remember, but that memory would translate over in my 20s after effective treatment as we can never go back there. And I'm so scared I will get back there, even though I have the building blocks of treatment, even though I know what this is now when I didn't when I was at rock bottom. I didn't know it was OCD, which is something that I'll revisit here in just a few minutes. Relapse hit because relapse hits. That's just the way it is. You're going to relapse. And I know you're scared. I was scared. I wasn't scared until it hit. And then I was really scared because I thought, the possibility is real. It's here. And what if I slide all the way back down there? What if I can't get out this time? What if it's too dark, right? And I felt like I was a real risk because I barely got out alive the last time. But that's the thing. There's two things. Number one, at that point in my life, I was still in major denial and wanted OCD as far away from me as possible. I was in my early 30s. I just underestimated the tools that I had. And tools can be coming to these videos, remembering that you have OCD, hearing someone say, yeah, I've been through this too, and this is how it felt, and going, okay, I'm okay. Yes, we cross the line into reassurance, right? When you're watching videos and reading articles to convince yourself you do or don't have OCD, yes, but assurance is needed in your toolbox because we need to remember that this is OCD. Why? Because it feels so real. When it feels this real, you don't believe it's OCD. And so sometimes hearing someone say, oh yeah, when this happens and when that happens, yep, it was OCD, or I went through this too, you can go, wow, okay, if that happened to this person, it can happen to me. Assurance is necessary, especially when you're headed into a relapse or you're afraid. So your toolbox is there. Even if you haven't gotten treatment, it's still there. What's helped you before? And why does this feel scary? I'm going to tell you. Don't tell your therapist I'm talking about this because they're going to be like, trauma isn't part of this. But whatever, I don't care what they think. They don't have lived experience, they don't understand. When we experience something that is traumatic, okay? So how trauma works, just I don't have I can't cite sources in this video, so but I'm just going to tell you how it works. When we experience something that is traumatic, which a lot of us have experienced when the onset of the big OCD episode happens, it's like everything freezes and you're just experiencing the trauma and figuring out how to survive it. This is such an elementary description, but it's what helps me. And so you're only going through the motions of living through it. This is why sometimes it feels like things slow down. All of your senses are heightened because you're experiencing something that your full brain isn't processing because everything is frozen and you're in it trying to make sense out of something that's painful, that's stressful, that's harmful, like a first episode of OCD. And sometimes people go through the first episode and maybe they get treatment, or maybe they don't, and it just kind of ebbs and flows and you kind of move on and then go back into life, right? Or you get treatment and you get better, or you get peer support, or you go to some peer groups and you do a few things, but your brain is going, get better, right? Get through this because this is horrible and we need to feel better. Your whole focus gets to, I need to get better. I need to get out of this suffering. I was saying this to someone earlier today, the ultimate mindfulness, the ultimate, I am here. I am mindful of everything is going on is suffering, right? And when you're suffering, you are just in a state of mind going, I need to do something to get out of this. How do I get out of this and get back to a neutral state of mind or where I'm not suffering even to any sort of degree? And OCD is no different. You get into that and you are just suffering and you can't get away from it. So the first time you go through this, you are just confused out of your fucking mind. And especially if you don't know it's OCD. That's when it's even worse because then you're just suffering trying to make sense out of a brain where you know something isn't real, but you can't stop, right? So then maybe once that passes, okay, you find out it's OCD, you Google this, you Google that, you show up at my videos, you do what you need to do to find out, okay, we're okay, right? We're all right. Well, then what if it happens again? And then at that point, you've forgotten how bad it can feel. You've forgotten how bad the suffering is. We forget suffering, right? When you have a sore throat, like a bad sore, y'all know that, you know what I'm talking about. You have the sore throat where you're like, you have to swallow and your whole body has to move to get the swallow down, right? Oh, it's so awful. And I always think whenever I have the sore throat, I'm like, I'll never take advantage of my throat hurting again. Next time, when this is gone, every day I eat, I'll be like, oh, well, 2 weeks later, here I am like eating all kinds of chips and whatever else, and I don't even think twice because I've forgotten what it felt like to suffer so bad with the sore throat, because you're just trying to get through it to feel better. In the first episode of OCD, you remember how bad it was to suffer. You remember it as being traumatic. So when you think to yourself, uh-oh, I might relapse, you are scared shitless that it's going to be that way again. And what some of you may be doing is you're having a trauma response. You're thinking back when you just everything was frozen and you were like, how do I get through this? And you're terrified. You don't know what's going on. And even if you have to go back into treatment, or if you decide to do ERP again, it's still so scary. Or you might revisit and go, oh my God, how did I get through that before? I can't do it again. I'll never do it again. All the doubts come up. So what I wanted to remind you of today is this. It's okay if you experience trauma. And that might be what's happening when you think to yourself, is this going to happen to me again? You may be scared to death, because you're thinking back on how bad it was, but you have a lot of things to rely on now. You know it's OCD. I mean, you're going to be like, what if it's not? But you know what I mean. Like, you wouldn't be here if you didn't. Come on now. There's your reassurance for the day. You have videos. You have OCD stories, podcasts. You've got things you can go to that are even outside of reassurance, just to go, okay, what do I do next? How, we all need the reminder. That's right. This is it. Sometimes we're not going to believe it's OCD again because it feels so real. But what do you have in your toolbox? What got you through the last time? Because if you've gotten through it before, you'll get through it again. Are you in the position now to get treatment? Are you in the position now to go to groups at OCD peers, or to get peer support or something that is helping to support where you're at now, instead of it feeling like it's happening to you and you can do nothing? You can always do something. You can keep moving. So I'm here to tell you, if you're here, then you have things in your toolbox. And you have things that can help. I think I even did a video like recently that was like, don't fear the relapse. But the difference in that video and this video is this. Like, it's so scary to remember rock bottom. Okay, so I get it. I know my rock bottom almost took my life. And am I scared that I'll get back to that place at some point? No, I think that I've got a lot of stuff in place where I won't get there, but I remember that time, and I remember how awful and how scared and lost I was. And that's the trauma piece that sometimes keeps me so stuck and scared that if I move at all, I could get back there. But if you don't move at all, you will get back there. So move, do something. Your mental health is like your physical health. Keep working on it. If you can't do therapy now, think about how you can get to a place where you can do it in a year or two, and what can you do in the meantime, to be able to keep your mental health strong, to get support when you need it. What are your go-tos that really help, that aren't necessarily reassurance, but just something that reminds you this is what you're going through, and you've gotten through it before, and you can get through it again. And also, if it's a trauma response, of course you're going to feel this way, because trauma needs to be resolved, and it needs to be resolved with a professional that can help you. Now, if you go to a trauma therapist and they're like, I'm going to treat your OCD with trauma therapy, don't do that. No, don't. But you can get therapy for the trauma of the experience you've had with OCD. It's not going to help your symptoms, right? The symptoms you need to be taught how to stop the compulsions. So yeah, that's my message tonight. Just to let you know that lots of people, the first time they go through an episode, or when you're really just heavily into a theme, man, that's the scariest time. And a lot of times we're just fearing the fear of how scary it is. We're fearing the fear that we could get back there again. just the fact that you know it's OCD and just the fact that you are seeking out ways to not get back there is a good sign, because you're still moving. And that means you have hope. So with that, I hope that you have a great night. Thanks for listening. If you want peer support or referrals, go to chrissyhodges.com. And if you're looking for therapy worldwide, go to treatmyocd.com. Y'all have a great week, and I will see you soon.